Valve is balancing Lash around the wrong ability. They keep buffing Flog and it's ruining the best thing about the hero. This video is proper Lashta to get you to play Lash. The anti-Bebop front needs new soldiers. That British bastard's had it too good for too long. But didn't he just get nerfed? Shut up. I don't care. I want him dead and buried. The thing about this hero, Ground Strike is the most fun part about his kit, but Flog buffs shoehorn it in when no one asked for it. Because Ground Strike's damage scales off your height relative to your target, Lash's gameplay loop is just one of the most satisfying ways to experience Deadlock in such an overwhelming way that most other heroes fail to replicate. Don't get me wrong, absolutely locking down opponents as Silver or completely nuking their health bars as Celeste is fun, but it's just not absolutely chunking their health bars after using all of the movement tech that my small brain allows me to execute to get as high up as Yoshi last name Ice Frog allows before rocketing down at the speed of sound with a dive kick so magnificent it would make you shed a tear. Lash is a hero that thrives on good movement fundamentals, but doesn't necessarily teach them. I've honestly seen many Lash players with the most abhorrent movement fundamentals get away with it because Grapple Leap or Superior Stam carry their movement capabilities, make me lose faith in all humanity. However, that may just be the outlier, especially as I go higher up in rank, and the fact that I don't often see other people on Lash in the first place, because when I'm not playing my favorite Stevedore, I've been diagnosed with a severe skill issue and the only medication is Lash. On the other hand, I'd like to think that my own movement fundamentals are pretty good, however, I can't say necessarily that fact originates from my Lash gameplay, since my late teens were filled with the complete overconsumption of the movement shooter genre. So generally, it's rather tough for me to say whether or not Lash's grapple and or Superior Stam or Majestic Leap serve as a crutch or not. Of course, however, having such movement fundamentals are obviously rewarded with more damage more often. We've come a long way from the 6-second cooldown Ground Strike where movement was indeed Lash's main pigeonhole, so your overall damage output on the mustachioed pit fighter is technically less tied to your movement skill ceiling for this reason, since it's now an 8-second cooldown at Ground Strike level 2 and with the cooldown items, something I find to be regrettable. And there is a reason for this. There's two, actually. I don't find either reason to be particularly good, but they do exist. The first is new players, and they suck at the game, and Lash is a noob stomper. That is, a hero who excels against enemies when they make mistakes. And of course, no one makes more mistakes than new players, so therefore in low ranks, Lash's damage output is drastically increased. The second, and in my opinion more egregious and annoying reason, is the fact that Ground Strike's low cooldown dealt too much damage in tandem with Flog. It's really important to stress that on its own it was fine, however, when Ground Strike or any Lash item gets nerfed, Yoshi just loves to buff Flog, and I hate it, and I really think most Lash OTPs do as well. Why? Simple. Ground Strike is the satisfying gameplay loop. Ground Strike is what I want to play around. However, Flog has been haphazardly ham-fisted into Lash's damage rotation because it kept getting those buffs, a lot having to do with its damage output, which is incredibly frustrating to see as a Lash one-trick, because we've been here before, we've played these games before. Absolutely no one wants to sit around just spamming Flog on Lash, but there was a time that was indeed Lash's meta, and it was absolutely miserable, and the very reason a small part of me dies whenever I read a Flog buff in the patch notes. I actually physically cannot understand why this is the case when Yamato literally exists in the game. I think most people don't really recognize this, but Yamato is actually rather similar to Lash, at least in theory. Lash's Ground Strike is a fat burst of damage, not entirely dissimilar from Yamato's Power Slash. Both need to be in close range to land their abilities, and both have a grapple to allow them to set up for their burst damage ability. Both Death Slam and Shadow Transformation are high impact ultimates that can turn the tide of a fight and help to set up for aforementioned burst damage abilities, and have alternate utility applications as well, while both have an obvious and loud wind-up time that serve as small counterplay to their kits so that they have to be used strategically. Finally, the third abilities are designed to be wide AoE heal options that may place a debuff on hit, in theory. See, Crimson Slash does indeed achieve this with Yamato, dealing low damage yet still healing Yamato a good amount. However, Flog is a very outdated ability, all things considered. It fits with Lash's kit, but I do believe its original intent was to be similarly used to Crimson Slash rather than have become a part of the damage rotation. I call this ability outdated because it's a relic of the lifesteal meta era of the game, because Flog, unlike Crimson Slash, heals based off of a lifesteal percentage of the total spirit damage of the ability dealt, rather than a flat percent based off of whether or not the enemy was hit. And again, when lifesteal was meta, this ability worked fine the way it was written. However, around this time last year, Sheriff Yoshi shot down the great lifesteal meta of 2025, inadvertently nerfing Flog. Now, this wasn't really a problem at the time since everyone had less sustain. However, a full year later, the ability's only changes were really buffing its damage output so that it may heal more for the lifesteal. Because of this, Flog invariably became more and more a part of Lash's damage rotation, and now we've come full circle. I don't want Flog to deal damage. I want to deal damage almost exclusively with ground strike. That's the fun ability. Flog is just pressing a button. There's no setup, there's no payoff, and certainly no skill expression outside of just getting in range. I want Flog to be like Crimson Slash, an ability that heals based off of the number of heroes hit, not based off the total damage it deals. Balancing Lash this way would also make him less of a problem to those that actually know how to counter buy, because then countering Lash would be more about just countering ground strike rather than his full damage rotation. This change would make Counterspell and Spellbreaker even more effective against Lash while still making him a fun hero to play, because his gameplay would more often revolve around what players enjoy doing when playing the hero. My name is FighterJet, and you should consider clicking on one of the 2 videos on screen now, because I think that would be cool, and I would think that you're cool if you did that, and my opinion is objectively the most important. Everyone says so.